Hey everybody, it's Justin from Built, and welcome to my last remaining corner of shame in the shop. The rest of my shop is very organized and well put together, but over here it just seems like I throw everything so that it's clean for videoing in the rest of the shop. But that's not okay, and I'm really underutilizing this space. So I'm going to tackle this today. In particular, it's horrible that I have to move all this out of the way whenever I want to get to my joiner and my bandsaw, and I'm not even using any of the French cleat area that I have over here. It's just a waste of space. So by doing some simple reorganizing in this space, right now it's like there's a wall here. I'm going to gain a full functional area that I can work in over here just by moving stuff a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to build a torsion box countertop. So that's kind of the build for this video. And the reason why I'm going to be doing that is I cannot have legs on this countertop. It must support itself by being attached to the wall and then also to the two sides. Nothing in the front. And so if you want a countertop that's still going to remain rigid, a torsion box is a good solution for that. In addition, I also want it perfectly level because I plan on doing epoxy in this corner. Whenever I make a sign on my CNC machine and I want to fill in the letters with epoxy, it must be perfectly level. If it's at all tilted, the epoxy will run out or it'll just settle uneven. So I'd like a space in my shop that's perfectly level all the time so I can just set a project there, fill it with epoxy and walk away and know that it's going to be okay. So that's what a torsion box is for. It's always perfectly level and it's very rigid. So I'm going to clean this up and then we're going to get into the torsion box build today on Bittner Built. So we're all cleaned out. By taking the vertical wood storage that was on the other side of this CNC machine and moving it over here, I've been able to push the CNC machine over. When the storage was over there, I was probably only using about this much of the space when that platform is 2 feet wide. And so there was a lot of open air over there that I really wasn't utilizing. By moving it over here, if I'm only using 6 inches of space, it only protrudes 6 inches and I still have a lot of room to move. So I'd rather have it on this side, and I will be coming up with a different custom solution for this later, but just for right now, I'm moving it over here. I have 6 feet of width now, so if I'm making a 24-inch top, I still have 4 feet of movement, or 3.5 if there's wood here. So this is gonna work out a lot better. Having my bandsaw over in the corner was a horrible mistake because I use this almost daily and it's a big pain in the butt to drag it out. So now I'm putting it out in the open so it's always available. It'll be very easy. It's really not taking up that much space. But a cool thing that I realized was putting it right next to my drill press. I have my standing desk drill press table that I built. Go watch the video on this if you haven't. This is my favorite thing in my entire shop. Now I have a built-in outfeed table right here for my bandsaw, which is awesome. I didn't even think about that, and once I moved it here, I was like, oh, that makes total sense. So just moving something around the shop can give you a lot of space. This is where my joiner usually lives, and it's a huge machine. It takes up a lot of space, and it doesn't serve any good purpose. I can't utilize the space above it, and so it's just a big rock in the shop when I'm not using it. So by pushing it over here and then applying the torsion box top on top, I've now gained floor space. I've gained a worktop directly above this because I could never work on this surface. And now I can reach all of this wall space. So by moving this over, I've accomplished a lot. It's just a little thing, but it's huge. Now, this is why we need the torsion box top, because this is a 7-foot span without middle supports. I can't put a leg here, obviously, because if I pull this out, it won't go. So it can only be supported by the sides and the back. That is a good amount of support, but if I were to just put some sort of regular board, you know there's going to be sag. Now, I'm not going to utilize this for heavy work. Just like you wouldn't a floating shelf on the wall, you wouldn't throw something heavy on there. There is weight capacity, and so I will understand that going forward. But my hope is that by making it a torsion box and perfectly leveling it when we apply it to the walls, that we're going to maintain that leveled surface for me to be able to just use it for epoxy work over here all the time and gain all of this wall space. So I'm super, oh, there's also all this under space too that we're gaining. So over here, I'm probably gonna keep my humidifier and dehumidifier because I use those whichever season it is to maintain humidity in the shop, and they hose out under the garage door. But over here, I could probably even build another cabinet with drawers if I wanted to. I'm not gonna do that in this video. I wanna experience this for a little bit before I decide what I'm gonna build there. But you know, we could definitely go crazy and really make this space work for us. So when we're building a torsion box table, it is incredibly important to make sure that that first board that we're building off of, which will eventually be the top, is on a completely flat and level surface. And I mean completely flat and level. If there's any deviations, it's going to mess up the torsion box and it will not be flat and level. So we have to make sure that we spend the time to start the process. Now, for me, I'm lucky enough that I already have a torsion box. That is this table here. And so I made this table a torsion box. I know it's perfectly flat, and I did that because it's my assembly table. Now, when I built this, I'm going to do it this method that I'm going to demonstrate for you. And what you're going to want to do is either use 2 sawhorses or some sort of table surface. And you're going to take a minimum of 3 2x4s and space them out the distance. Now, these 2x4s need to be the exact same size. So run them through the joiner first, and then run them through the table saw on the other side so that you have it, that they're the exact height of each other and that they're perfectly flat on both the top and the bottom. Once we have these, we can then place what will eventually be the top, because we build it upside down, the top of our torsion box. And you can even tell right now, like this one is not perfectly level. So what we'll do is we will be shimming one of the sides of each of these boards until we get it to be perfectly level all the way across. And make sure that you're applying the shim under the 2x4, not under your tabletop piece. Once we get them completely level, all the way across, there's no movement in here, we're taking a level, we're checking everywhere. We want it to just be center of that bubble, no matter what direction we move in, all the way across. Once we're in that position, take a hot glue gun and just glob hot glue around the 2x4, around the shims, because we don't want it to move. Hot glue can be removed, it's pretty easy, but it will hold everything in place while we do this assembly process. If you don't put hot glue, just moving around on here could loosen the shims and then throw everything off. So it's very important that we set up a nice and level surface so that we have a nice and level final product. All right, let's go ahead and assemble this thing. I've cut all of my pieces, and I'm going to put a full cut list at the end of the video in metric and imperial. That way, if you're looking to follow along, you can. I've cut my top and my bottom piece, making sure that they're exactly the same size. And then since I have the garage door track that's going to interfere with mine, I had to cut out this notch that will be adequately far away from the track that it's not going to hit. I cut it at the same time, so I put the top and the bottom together, cut it out that way. I knew that the notch would be the exact same. Now, when you build a torsion box table, you're actually going to build it upside down. So this is my top. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to put the bottom off to the side for the end of the project. And we'll be assembling from the underside of the top of the counter. So the thickness that I decided to make this tabletop was 3.5 inches. So that is 2 3/4 inch pieces, the top and the bottom, and then a 2-inch spacer piece, which will be standing up, and this is what gives it its rigidity. It maybe is a teeny bit thicker than I want to, because you know, the thicker you make it, the more weight you're adding to it as this wood gets taller. But I also needed ample room to be able to put mounting screws through here. I wanted to be able to do 2 in each position, and if I went any smaller, that really wouldn't serve well. So once you set your fence to that 2-inch mark to start ripping stuff, do not move it. Don't undo it to do other things and bring it back. Keep it in that spot, rip everything all at once. That way you know everything is the same height. That is very important and key for this. What I did was I ripped these full-length strips, and then I just chopped it down on the miter saw into the, I think, 54 little blocks that I have to assemble this. Okay, let's get to assembling. I'm going to demonstrate first, and then I'll do it quickly. So we're going to start with an end cap. So this is going to sit on top of the wood. Right at the end. I'm going to be drilling pocket hole screws into all of these beforehand. Everything needs an incredible amount of glue and screwed down, and we're going to clamp it. So everything needs to be precise. We're going to make sure that everything's clamped so nothing moves when we're putting those pocket hole screws in. We want to make sure that we are assembling it really rigid and straight. So next, we're going to be lining up this edge piece. This is the most important piece. This is the back of the counter. So I've labeled in a big F the front. This is the back. The back is where we're going to start off with, because this is where all these screws are going to be going into the wall that is going to be holding it up. So I want to make sure that I'm perfect back here. If there's any imperfections that travel that way, I'd rather it be in the front, because I'm going to put a front molding piece on there that can hide something. There's no load-bearing things happening out there. So let's do it in the back. Of course, we don't want any issues, but you know, hey, stuff happens, right? So once we put this one down, we'll then be using our spacer blocks, and your judgment is up to you. You can do whatever spacing you want. I like to be very precise with it, and I use my spacer blocks. They're 5 inches, so it'll be 5 inches that way, 5 inches this way. Do another one. 5 inches that way, 5 inches this way. Then that will give me the position for placing my next one. After this is screwed down and glued, I'll be pulling each one of these and gluing it on 3 sides, putting it back in where it goes, and then I'm going to brad nail it from here and here. This is the back, no one will see it, it doesn't matter. This is the inside, no one will see it. Even once we get to the front, since I'm putting a decorative molding piece on the front, no one will see the brads. But it's important that these are also held in place really well while the glue dries. So we're going to use an incredible amount of glue and an incredible amount of brads today. My right and back sides are glued and screwed down, so I have a nice rigid structure to start building my lattice work off of. Now, I'm going to be doing a box form. I've seen people do diagonals and honeycombs and all sorts of stuff. It really doesn't matter as long as you have a nice, uniform, cohesive structure that's tying it all together. We're also making sure that we're, standing our wood up as opposed to this, because we want to make sure that we're supporting our top and bottom equally, and that's kind of what gives it this sandwiched rigid effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place one against the wall, one flat, or we should say one vertical, one horizontal, horizontal, vertical, and I'm just going to keep going down the line this way. I'm going to go ahead and start by gluing each one of these in place. I'm going to be putting glue on this particular one that goes in the corner. I'm gluing all over this guy, top, bottom, putting pretty much all the surfaces. Lovely glue. Maybe I should have brushed that one, but I think it's okay. All right, that one's going to be in there real good. On this side, or the back and the sides, I'm going to double up on every surface, just because I want that extra holding power when we do our lag screws into the wall to hold this. I want to make sure that I'm going for success, right? If you mess up on which faces to glue in this, it's okay. More glue in this scenario is always better, and it's going to be hidden anyway. So now that I'm away from that, it's only, well, yes. There we go. And we need to do this process quick because there might be some movement when I am attaching this one, I might have to shift some pieces. So if we wait way too long, if you accidentally put a piece not in place correct, or it shifts, you know, some sort of thing, you know, you're gonna regret that. So move quick. Okay, so I've completed my first run. I did forget to mention in the previous cut, as I was sandwiching these in, I was brad nailing it from this side. I'm now gonna just run down the line real quick and tack every single one of these in 2 times, just so I'm maintaining that exact squareness all the way down. So while these are pulled tight at the bottom, some of them are just bending a little at the top. So we're going to do that for some extra strength. Now, when I start my next run, if you notice, this one started this way. I'm instead going to start this way and then place one. That way I'm able to shoot a brad nail this way, so they're off center of each other a little bit. If I had them right in line with each other, I wouldn't be able to get it from this side, and that's no good. Now, after I do this run, I'm going to do the same pattern like this, but after I glue these in place, I'm pulling these spacers. I only doubled up with this one because it's the exterior. Now, this is the exterior as well, so when I pull all the spacers, I'm actually going to add one back here again, just because I want double wood that way. So that took me 2 hours. I've done this before, so factor some time. This process takes a while, but it is very easy. It's just a lot. So the next thing that we need to do, now that we're completely finished with our grid, is we need to mark the grid on the outside perimeter. So every single one of these lines of blocks, I need to put 2 marks, because it kind of alternates back and forth. And at the ends, I need to mark for each one of the long runs. Okay, so all the marks are done all the way around, and I've placed the bottom on the top. There's a couple things that I want to note. Number one, when I cut this bottom piece, I cut it so that the nicer, flattest side is actually the one that's hidden. And the reason is because I want to have the best glue adhesion when I put these together. I don't care about the underside, and this again is the underside. You're never going to see it when it's installed anyway, so who cares if it's the bad stuff. But you know, when I have a knot and stuff here or a chip out, the glue isn't going to really bond too well. So that's why I did that. Next, when I line this up right now, it's perfect in the back. It's completely flush all the way down and on the sides. It's great. But when I look at the front does not look super smooth everywhere. So here I'm in a little bit, then you'll notice it bows out a little bit here, then it goes back to flush, and you know, out a little bit right here and flush. Now, why did that happen? Because when you're using blocks, and so when we started at the back side, any issue or mistake that I make will compound and get worse and travel with it. So I really did anticipate that there would be some little itty bitty thing that's going on here. This is not major. And again, I'm going to be putting a plate over it. So what I'm going to do after we're all finished is I'm going to just hit this with a belt sander for a minute just to get it flushed up again. And then I'll put the front plate on and it'll look pretty nice. The thing is, I need to use a chalk line. So what I will do with the chalk line is start it at one of my marks here. Rain and chalk. Of course I didn't mark right here. Crappy. Boo, Justin, boo. We're going to continue and do this for each and every single one of the lines. All right, our lines are on. There are 2 different paths we can take right now. Path 1. Path one is for people who are going to use this just as a torsion box top for some other use other than mounting it to the wall. If that's the case, we're going to take off the top, apply glue over all the surfaces, put it on, and you can either screw or brad nail this guy home. Anywhere there's one of these chalk lines, you're going to hit wood. Option two is what I have to do. Because I have to mount it to the wall, I need access to the inside of this box. I need to be able to get right here, take a right angle bit, and drive a screw from the torsion box into the wall. And I can't do that if this is on here. However, I need to put it on now. So what I will do is I will take this off, just like you. I'm going to apply everything everywhere except for around the perimeter, the right, left, and back of this top. I'm not going to put glue there. When I put this top back on, and I'm going to go ahead and nail and screw just like the other step would. After I do that, I'm going to take my track saw and I'm going to cut these off. I'm going to set my track saw so that I only cut through this top layer of wood. I'm going to cut these pieces off and I'm going to let it dry. And then when it comes time to install, these spaces will be exposed. After I install it, I can keep those pieces and I can just go ahead and screw them on after the fact. That way I close it up and I give that rigidity that having that structure there will provide. I'm going to apply those with screws. That way I can remove it in the future if I want to. That way I'll have access to the screws to get it off the wall. All right, I've glued everywhere except for the exterior perimeter, which is what I need to do. Now, if you have two people, you can lift it up and put it on, but everybody's asleep in my house except for me, so what I'm gonna do is put 3 scrap pieces of wood down first, lay it on top, and then I can remove those scrap pieces after I feel I have it in the correct spot. I'm going to go ahead and start with some screws, just maybe like 6 or 7 through here just to get it to pull down, and then I'll start hitting it with the brad nailer. All right, I have gone to town on this thing. It's now time to let it dry. Even though we have so many screws and brads and everything in this, we're making a torsion box so that it's perfectly flat. We need to give the 24-hour minimum to this glue to let it harden up and cure before we do anything with this, before we move it. I don't want to knock anything out of whack because it hasn't solidified yet. So I'm going away for the weekend, so I'm going to let it sit for 3 days. That way it's going to be nice and good. I'm going to think about it the whole time I'm away. I hate leaving a project. Like, I'll work till 4 in the morning to get something done because I want to complete it that day. So it pains me to leave it, but hey, we got to let the glue dry. I am back from vacation, not well rested. I'm very tired, but I'm ready to finish up this project. By this point, the glue has really cured. It should be a very rigid structure. Now we're going to do the relief cut. If you're mounting it to the wall like I am, we have to do the 3 cuts here. Make sure that you set your track saw to only cut 3/4 of an inch. You obviously don't want to chop this thing in half by accident. The relief cuts are done, so I will be able to screw this into the wall. I'm now going to go ahead and sand off all the blue chalk line marks. And then I'm going to take a belt sander to the front here where I have a little bit of bowing in the front. I'm going to sand that all down before I glue a piece of molding to the front. After that, we're ready to mount it. So the desk is ready to be mounted to the wall. This thing is about 100 pounds based on how I built it. So I'm going to need like 4 or 5 people to hold this in place while I'm screwing it into the wall and make sure that it's level. Or I can just utilize my drill press standing desk table that I showed earlier in the video. And there is a reason why this thing is my favorite thing that I've ever built. Now what I can do is I can lower this into place. It's going to be snug, so I'm going to have to bang it. All right, so I'm going to spend some time. I'm going to level this out, and I'm going to use shims. So I'm going to shim it on this table so that it is perfect as it is, and it's not going to move. And then all I'm going to do is go under and screw it in. So nobody has to hold anything. This thing is going to make it so easy. So you can see why I needed to cut this open. That way I can have access to put all of these screws in. I made sure to at least put one screw in every single bay. On the side bays I added a lot just because there's very little side and I needed to stay exactly where it is. Now what I'll do is take the pieces that I did cut off, and I'll go ahead and probably just brad nail them on without glue. I want them easily removable in the future in case I want to take this off. I need to have access to these screws. The before and the after. Wow, so we definitely opened up the space. I mean, I went from this just being a junk corner to now having an extra 7 to 8 foot workspace over here, which is amazing. I threw an extra light over here to give this more brightness since this was kind of a dark corner before. We have our jointer underneath here, and that's why we made this a torsion box floating table. This jointer completely fits under here, and I can pull it out whenever I need to use it. I actually even have some space for my larger rolling stool now, so kind of a place to tuck that away. And if I'm sitting over here, I can sit in this stool and work in this position, which is nice. I took some old stuff that I had and threw it over here, so I'm going to make some custom stuff for this space to make it look well organized. But even for now, I kind of made this the epoxy area because that's what I made this a torsion box for. It is perfectly level all the way across. I will have no qualms about putting any project here, putting epoxy on it. It's not going to run, which is awesome. Now, when I see projects like this and somebody had a ton of stuff over in the corner and then you see the final product and you only see like 5 things up here, you're like, where'd all your stuff go? So I want to point that out to you just so it's not like, hey, I shoved it in a different corner and I'm just, making it, staging it to look good over here. This is what it's going to be like for me. My CNC machine is 5 foot wide, so for temporary, what I did was I had all this scrap that was over here that's long. I have painter's poles, I have metal rods, I have all sorts of long stuff that was just shoved back here. And I laid it on top, and it's actually wonderful for it. So what I'm gonna do, not in this video, I'm gonna make a cubby system for it, and I'm gonna section it off so I can put like dowels in one thing and pipes in another and stuff like that. So this is actually a great space for me to be able to put all this scrap. So that was a big thing that was back here. And then I threw a bunch of stuff up here in my kind of storage thing. Moving the bandsaw over here was totally the right move. I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. Now it's out in the open, easy to use. It has a built-in outfeed table right here too, so that is sweet. And I'm not having to rearrange stuff to get it out anymore. Well, guys and girls, I hope you enjoyed the video. This was very much not scheduled. I looked at this horrible corner and an idea popped in my head. And so I ran with it. I put all my other videos to the side for the moment. So there's still more to do over here. I need to make some stuff. I need to finish this, apply a finish and stuff. I'm going to do that a little bit later because I got to get back to my work that I'm supposed to be working on. But I'm so happy that I did this. I got 8 feet more of workspace, I got wall space, and I got a place to put large machinery out of the way, which ended up giving me floor space. I'm at the point in this shop where I'm maxed out, and I did not think that I could buy any more large machinery. And there's some stuff that I really want, but there's just nowhere to put it other than in the middle of the floor and have to constantly move it out of my way. So in doing this, I've now opened my eyes to, hey, I could actually do a floating top like this all the way down, and then I could have other large machinery along this wall. The little stuff that's down here, I can find another place for little stuff, but 400-pound stuff, it has to live on the floor. So I might be able to get some other cool stuff in here. So I'm very stoked about that. Torsion boxes are awesome. If you don't have one, really consider making one in some capacity, because whenever you're assembling something when you're doing woodworking, having a perfectly flat level surface means that you're going to have less likely to have an error when you're assembling. If you're in some sort of wavy table, yeah, you might not be square when you put everything together. So a torsion box is great for that. It's great for epoxy and it's great for a CNC machine. I have a small torsion box my CNC is based off of too, so it has a flat, perfect surface to work off of. I hope you'll like and subscribe to the channel. I always try to put out good content, so if you liked it and you watched it all the way to the end, I hope you'll do that for me. And as always, stay safe in the shop. I will see you in the next video.